openbarger.com. We have a great show for you today. We are going to talk to the business owner specifically today. So, without further ado, welcome, Judy. How are you today?
I am awesome. Good morning, Carlos. So happy to be here.
Glad to have you here. Today is a very special show because we're going to talk to folks about business, those that want to start business, those that are already into their business practice as well. So I want to make sure that we have enough time because we have a lot of ground to cover. So let's get started. So one of the questions that has come up, Judy, is what are the first steps to consider when looking to start a business?
Wow. I think there are three. You need a purpose, you need an outcome, and you need a plan. So why am I doing this business? Why am I carrying on this business if it's a family business? Is it because I want to do what I love to do and I want to turn it into monetizing that? Is it because I want to carry out a family tradition? We've always done this craft and I want to keep it going. Is it because I want to get rich real quick?
Right.
Yes, please bring the money. So really starting with why. And then the second thing is outcome. What are my expectations with this business? What do I really want to have happen? Do I want to make 20,000, 50,000, 5 million? Do I want to turn it into an empire? What do I want to do with this business? And third and most important is you got to have a plan. This is where at the beginning, this is where you want to chart your course and seek wisdom. This is where you spend money and time to bring in the expert that's going to help you chart the course and navigate well. Got to have a plan.
So having said that, before actually we talk a little bit about the plan, what are the different types of business entities? For example, I've heard folks talk about S corporations, C corps, LLCs, DBAs. What are some of these types of entities, and maybe you can touch a little bit about them?
Absolutely. Well, a DBA is doing business as, and basically it's just you putting on a different hat. You have your personal hat and you have your business hat. Your tax return's the same. Everything's the same about your business. It does have a name, but all of your expenses flow right through on your C form of your personal tax return. When your business has grown large enough where you need to have more expenses available to you, you need to have more structure and accounting and more maybe liability and protection, that's when you want to think about incorporating. And there are many kinds of incorporation. There are many kinds of corporations. There's a C corporation and an S corp. That's the big distinction. A C corp has special liability protection, but it does have a double tax associated with it. So there's pros and cons to that. For most small businesses, an S corp is just fine. The taxes will flow through to your personal return, and you don't have as many logistics, as many formalities. It's not that big of a deal. When you want the liability protection, when you want to make sure that if the business goes down, you don't lose your house or you don't lose your other assets, that's when you want to think about extra protection like an LLC, limited liability corporation. It's just a type of corporation. And there's an LLP, limited liability partnership. There's several corporations that are designed specifically for professionals, architects, attorneys, physicians, and things like that. So there are so many things you want to think about when you're going to incorporate. The biggest question I get from people that are starting a business or growing a business just in the first couple of years is, when do I incorporate? When do I take that step? The downside to a corporation is there's extra costs, there's extra taxes, and some cities and states require extra permits or licensing depending on the nature of your business. All those have costs associated. It's got its own tax return, so there's those costs in accounting. So you want to make sure that you're ready and you can afford that protection that you need. So I wouldn't start a business that you're thinking is going to be like a hobby business. If I get up to 50,000, 60,000 in a year or so, I wouldn't incorporate yet. I think that magic mark for most businesses is right around $100,000 in gross sales. If you make $100,000 in your business, or you expect to in this given year, that's when you want to think about incorporating, because the benefits will outweigh the cost at that point.
Got it. No, that's great advice. I appreciate you actually sharing that too. But we also talked, you mentioned about a plan, right? So when you're thinking about this, it always sounds great in your mind. It always sounds great when you put it briefly on paper. What are maybe some quick tips that you can give folks about maybe where to even begin with the plan?
Yeah. Well, find someone who's successful at what you're doing. I would bring in a financial advisor. I'd bring in an accountant. I'd bring in someone who's an expert who's paved that course, who's done what you're doing. Listen to those people. If it's about manufacturing something, talk to people who've made all the mistakes already, so you don't have to do that. If it's a technology company, if it's a whatever it is, maybe it's something in medicine, talk to people who've been there before and they know what to do and what, more importantly, not to do. And I think the biggest part of planning is the cash flows. So you want to make sure that you're not overcapitalizing. I don't like to see people borrow from family. I don't like to see people borrow from their retirement, from their future to start a business. It can happen, but statistically, most brand new businesses and entrepreneurial businesses fail. Very few fail. And when they do, it's down the road a few years. So you've got to be able to capitalize that business in the meantime. You don't want to borrow from your house. You don't want to borrow from your family to do that. Small business loan is okay if you're not over leveraging, if you need to get capital. I prefer to see people come in with partners or other people that have an interest in the growing business and they'll actually get a piece of the benefits down the road. But capitalizing is probably the most important part of any young business or new business's plan.
And that actually follows my next question, was actually going to be, what are some of the recommendations you have on cash flow for businesses as well, too?
Well, I think the biggest thing is if you have to borrow, do it professionally. Find a good bank or find a good business bank that can help you do that. They're going to take the time to help you they're going to require a business plan. They're going to require troubleshooting. And what if this happened? How would you handle that? They want to make sure, because they're on the hook now with you. They want to make sure the business is successful. And why not use that resource to help your business plan flourish? So it's a great resource that way. Just because you borrow money doesn't mean you have to spend it all as well.
Right.
You always want to have, a cash in the back room there. So when something happens, you have quick hiring, quick scaling you need to do, that you've got resources there to handle that.
Excellent. That also brings me to another point too, that when we deal with businesses, sometimes we also get family involved, and there may be partnerships within families, which is, for me, it's like a red flag. I don't know if I ever want to get into business with family, because it always creates, you never know, but
Yep.
What is something businesses and families, though, should expect when it comes to taxes?
Well, aside from taxes, I have had family business in my world my whole life since I was a teenager. I've always been involved in family business. And I'll tell you, it's the best of the best and the worst of the worst.
Right.
You can extremes when you work with family, for sure. So you can get really tangled up, but then the blessings are accelerated as well. But I think when you're thinking about family business and taxes, the most critical thing to think about, like the biggest problem that comes up with families and taxes, is the ones that are doing the 1099. They're getting paid a commission, or they're getting paid a bonus, maybe K1, they're getting bonuses, or they're getting irregular income. It's not just a straight salary. It's like, we can't make payroll. I'm not going to get paid this month, right? All that happens when it's your own business. So I think the most important thing is when you do have the windfalls, when things are going well and you do have this great income, to always make sure that you're escrowing away enough money for taxes. I've seen a lot of businesses either barely hang on or totally be gone because they weren't prepared for the taxes. It's like, oh, we're making a lot of money. Let's keep making widgets and building, whatever we're manufacturing. But if you don't have the money for taxes and IRS comes on the door, right, it just gets so high so fast. So you want to make sure you're prepared. A good rule of thumb is anywhere, and it depends on how much expenses you have to write off, right, in a growing business. Between 25 and 40% of everything that's coming in an early stages of a business should be put away for tax. So plan on expanding your business and living off your business, if you're doing that, with 60% of the revenue that's coming in. So that means after you pay for your venue, after you pay for your staff, after you pay all your employees and tax, payroll tax and all that, you better have enough left to put that tax away. And I would take it off the top. That's the one thing that bites people. And it doesn't happen immediately. It's a year or two later when you start getting the notices and the penalties and interest are accruing. And now you have more taxes on top of those, and it just gets crazy. So from the beginning, all the money that comes in is great, but it's not all yours. You got to share with Sam. With that being said, if you're really smart about the way you're growing your business and you're writing off things like maybe part of your home, part of your travel, part of your car, if you use anything reasonably and necessarily for your business, IRS says, yeah, if you need to have a car for business, you're a realtor, part of your car expense should be for that. If you need to commute, and to meet with clients or to do your sales, whatever you're doing, then of course you should be able to write off the tax, the insurance, the registration, some of the cost of your car, if not all of it. If it's used exclusively for business, you can take the whole thing. Like if you have a work truck, if you're a contractor, you have a work truck, you're probably not taking that to Costco. Well, maybe you are, but you don't write off that part. But if you've got a great big van that you have full of, plumbing equipment or something, you're probably not taking the kids to school in that, right? So that would be an exclusive use for that vehicle, and all the expenses associated with the gas, the oil, repairs can be a write-off. So there's a lot of advantages to not only incorporating, but having a business that you can write these expenses off. It's wonderful for families.
Excellent. Folks, thank you for joining us today. We are talking about the message is actually out there for business owners today. So we have Judy Kopenbarger here. She's an expert all around for money, truth, and life, which is her book. And congratulations, by the way, #1 bestseller on Amazon. So very happy for that for you.
We're so excited. Our team has done a great job putting it together, getting the word out. The whole book launch and virtual, book tour has been so amazing. It's well received, and we're getting great feedback from it. So we're very excited.
That's awesome. And also, folks, if you're not following Judy, please follow her at judykopenbarger.com. All of her social media links are there on her website. She's also got a wealth of resources that can help you. And today, before the show, we're going to talk a little bit about also her online mastery program. So we'll make sure we touch on that so you get to learn a little bit more about that as well, too. Once again, make sure that you are following Judy. And if you also have questions for the show, feel free to message us, and we'll make sure that we can cover that at a later time as well, too. So, Judy, moving right along. So we've kind of gone through the process, considering how to start a business, some of the different types of entities. We talked about cash flow, what to expect when it comes from taxes. Let's talk about a succession plan for business, both family and non-family.
Ooh, that can get tricky because we have 5 children. We have some in the business, some not in the business. And so succession can get tricky when we're thinking about legacy and fairness, what's fair. If the big bulk of your life and your lifestyle is your business, that's where most of the resources and assets are, how do you be fair? And that's a whole can of worms. There's wonderful programs, wonderful planning we can put together for people and have done over the years. But I think, the most important thing is to have a plan that has an exit strategy, because things change. A succession plan is basically a contract with maybe moving parts like insurances and ways to finance the plan. You want to make sure that it's going to work over time. And if something changes, you have a way to get out of it, just like any contract. You and I are both meeting of the minds. We have a total agreement right now. We shake hands. It's good. But something changes. What if my health changes? What if you move to Boston? What if something happens with the business? Right now it's doing, $500,000 a year, and all of a sudden it's not. So when those things change, we need to change our agreement. But if one of us is unavailable to do that, we need to have in writing what we would have done. So a good contract, a good succession plan has all the contingencies thought through. What if this happens? What if it goes really well? How will we change this agreement if we need to? What if it's not going well, or if something happens to one of us? How would we finance that outcome? And how would we plan for it, being, again, fair with the children, grandchildren, spouses? If you're married to, if you have 2 partners and they're both married, let's suppose they're both men married to their wives and they're both teachers or whatever, make it simple. Mm-hmm. The 2 partners are essential. One of them does sales, one of them does operations, right? One of them is gone. What do we do now? We're going to need money to replace the value of that partner who now is not here. But what about the spouse? What about the wife who's home? Hey, that was our income. That was our future. What do we do now? Harry's gone, right? So sometimes life insurance, sometimes other annuities can help with that kind of planning. So there are tools and resources you can use, but most importantly, you want to have a plan that's clear. It thinks through all the contingencies, and there's an exit strategy.
So, speaking of plans, before we get to our final question, though, I want to have you speak to folks about your online mastery program, because I think this all ties into also creating that wisdom that you're sharing with folks, not only from your book, but also with this amazing program. So, do you want to share a bit about that, please?
Oh yeah, all the stuff that we're talking about, all the business entities, all the business protections, the business taxes, the legacy succession plan. How do you put that together? Where do you start? And how do you avoid pitfalls and mistakes? All of that is in the online mastery program, Money, Truth, and Life online mastery program. And we developed this to help people know what they don't know, to help people chart the course and then navigate it well. Learn from other real stories. There's a lot of client stories in there of places where they did really well and places where they didn't do so well. So you can avoid the things that didn't work and not have to make that mistake yourself. But the other thing is just to learn from people who were able to use these tools and implement and either use our resources or other resources now that they know what even to ask when they walk in to talk to a professional, and just get the money thing right. And it's more than the money. So Money, Truth, and Life, there are many truths. There are some principles about finance and principles about our attitudes about finance that are always true. Those are money truths. There are ways that you can use tools and use the different genres of insurance. I mean different genres of finance, like insurance and tax and legal, cash flows, cash reserves, banking, mortgages, investments, 401ks, and things like that. There are ways to use all of that to make the perfect course to get the outcome that you want. And the online mastery program helps you get that. It helps you get that plan right. It helps you identify any gaps that you have so you can go to the right kind of financial professional to fill a gap and get really wise counsel along the way.
That's great, folks. And again, you can find all of this great information, including the online mastery program, at judykopenbarger.com. So make sure you do check out her website, share it with folks. It's a game changer. I'm telling you guys, the book, the mastery program, it is a complete game changer. And you really, if you're here in your life, you want to take it to the next level, you got to follow some of this amazing wisdom that Judy's willing to share. So speaking of sharing, speaking of wisdom, let's talk about legacy. I know that you're big on legacy. You're big on sharing your gifts and wisdom with folks, but we're on a business aspect of it. Let's talk about legacy planning. So can you briefly describe what that is and what we should start thinking about as business owners?
Sure. Well, legacy planning is a legacy is not something that you leave, it's something you create. I think it's an active, moving, breathing thing when you're thinking about your legacy. And I think there are three major prongs to legacy. One is family. What do I want for my family? What values do I want to pass down? What family history do I want to pass down? What life lessons do I want them to learn so they don't have to do it the hard way?
Mm-hmm.
So it's about family and maybe setting them up financially or not. Maybe making sure that they have money for the grandkids to do mission trips or have special birthday parties or plan for weddings or maybe go do some education. So there are all kinds of things that you can do in legacy for family. But I think there's also legacy in business, and we're talking about business today. So we talked a little bit about some of the tools that you can use for a successful succession plan. Who's going to be my successor? If they can't do it, who's going to be the successor after that? How will we finance that? Do we even want the business to go on? You know, when I'm gone, do I want someone to carry it on, or is it time just to fold it up and cash out? Right? So all of those things to think about as a family, if it's a family business. And then I think thirdly, there's the ministry aspect. So some businesses are faith-based, and it's really about the bigger picture. It's about helping people. It's about making a difference out there. It's about kingdom-mindedness for a lot of people that have that Christian faith, with which we. It's about making sure that the causes you care about are handled. I mean, maybe you have a holistic pharmaceutical business. That's not an oxymoron, right? But you have something really great that helps people with their bodies or their health and their wellness. Maybe it's chiropractic, maybe whatever it is, osteo medicine, but something that helps people. And it's really more about the people having that it's accessible for people and it's not common knowledge. But if your business goes away, that might go away. Maybe it's a certain special way that you do what you do in technology or transportation or manufacturing. And if you're not doing it, it won't be done. I have a client that has the patent on, it just came to mind, a patent on how to freeze dry and store beans.
Wow.
And if it weren't for this technology, it started in the 40s, and so it's been a family business for a long time. And this guy was a chemist, figured it out and passed it on to his kids. But if we didn't have that, no one in the world would be able to have beans the way that we have beans. It's just like, wow. For him, it was a labor of love. It's like, this is what feeds. Beans and rice feed most of the world. Everywhere you go, it's the staple in almost every continent, every country. So it's very important to have this technology. And for him, it's like, this is what I've given the world so we can feed people that need it. It wasn't about making a bunch of money. He did. It wasn't about having influence. He did. It wasn't about all of that. It was about my gift to the world, something I figured out, like a divine download that I got to share with them. So sometimes it's about that. The legacy is about the causes you care about, not simply the business, succession, or the family.
So let me ask you with a follow-up question with that. What is Judy's vision of her legacy for Money, Truth, and Life?
Well, I'm like the bean guy. My work is not about me retiring and living on a hill in a house, isolating from everybody forever. It's about people having the tools and resources they need to do better. Because when you know better, you do better. So I am all about people avoiding mistakes, giving more money away, having more success, getting their mindset right, getting the emotional part of money all straightened out, making sure that if there's disharmony in the marriage or disharmony in the family about finance, it goes away because the principles are there and now we're all on the same page. We've got a plan for every family, one family at a time, every business, one business at a time, to have these resources and get the money thing right, plus the rest of it. That's my legacy. That's why I'm doing this. That's why we're here.
And that's also a great point where I wanted folks and listeners to really see that side of you too. That she's the real deal. She's not here to make a quick buck and run. No, it's not about that. It's really about changing and affecting people's lives for the betterment. And I think that says a lot about you. That says a lot about your character. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners can relate to that and can appreciate that as well too. So I want to thank you for that also. But hey, now it comes down to that favorite part of our show, which is it's our Money Truth Challenge. So do you want to talk a little bit about last week's challenge, and then we can talk about this week's?
I want to talk about this week's challenge.
Okay.
I am ready to talk about this week's. I'm so excited and so inspired by a story that I heard. It was actually from a country song. And it was a gentleman who was writing a letter to himself. He was writing a letter, and I think there's probably a lot of songs and stories like that, but writing a letter to himself when he was 15. And he said, watch out for that. Here's something I want you to celebrate. That, that kind of hurt, but don't worry about it. You'll get over it. And I was so inspired by that to think about when we're looking at our mindset and our beliefs about finance, if we could have gone back, with the series of when they go back in time and then they go forward in time, back to the future, right?
Right.
If we could go back and say, oh, let's just change this one little thing. If we could get advice from our future self, what would that be? So this week's challenge is to write a letter to yourself when you were 15, 16, like high school age. And I want you to think about a few things. When we're looking at, this is a financial letter, right? So when we're looking at finances, earning, spending, managing, and giving money. There's how you do that, saving money, right? There's these few things about money that we're navigating all the time, whether we're conscious and intentional about it or not. So when we're looking at all those aspects of money, if you're writing a letter to your 15 or 16-year-old self, what would it say about those things, those aspects of finance? Would you give yourself advice? Would you tell yourself when you were a teenager to celebrate? Like, oh my goodness, celebrate that. You're doing great. Would you be giving yourself warnings? Watch out for these things, maybe mistakes that you've made or you've seen other people make. What would you tell yourself in a letter when you were 15? What would you go back and write? So I want you to actually take pen and paper. You don't, click on your cell phone. There's
Nope.
something about the brain goes to the eyes, to the hands, to the paper. It's valuable, trust me. So, and actually write a letter. It could be a few sentences or it could be pages. What would you tell your 15-year-old self about money and the future that they have in finance? There's your challenge.
That's a great challenge. One of the things I think right now out of the gate that I would tell myself is, hey, don't ever go back to 2020, man. Just skip that year over so we can go from there, right?
Too many moving parts, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But no, that is a great challenge. I think, folks, you've heard that. I think that everybody should participate in this, and we would love to hear your feedback when it comes to this. Looking back at from your future self, giving yourself financial advice as well. I can think of, oh man, a lot of things that if I knew then what I know now would be in a whole different ballgame, whole different mindset, ways of thinking things. So great challenge, as always, of course.
So I'm already thinking of things in my letter, like don't borrow from your 401k to buy your first condo. Do you know what that would be worth now? I wouldn't be here. Well, maybe I'd be here, but I wouldn't need to be working.
Right.
It's like, don't do it. So we could have waited another year. We could have saved a little longer. So that would be probably one of the first paragraphs for me.
But you know what? It's also on a side note. I mean, just not to deviate too much from the topic, but it's also a lot of us never really had that financial expert in our lives. Our parents did what they could and did the best that they could, what they knew. But now we have so many resources, such as your website on judycorporatebarger.com. We have you as a resource. We have your book, Money, Truth, and Life. There's things that had we had this growing up, it would be game changers for a lot of us,
Yeah. I can't wait to get this into schools. I've taken my teen cash into schools and I've done a lot of education just locally here in California in schools. But, when you look at, it's been going around actually on social media. What do you wish you would have learned in high school? That kind of was another little prompting for this question. And one of the most common answers is, I wish they would have taught me like how to do money. Because we've all made those mistakes. We all didn't know. And we don't all have parents or older family members that can kind of guide us, or do we want them in our business, right?
Right.
So where do you get the information, and why not have it in school?
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Just everywhere. So that's part of my motivation, to just get this word out so anybody looking for it will find it, and at least have a roadmap to move forward.
Excellent. So Judy, we have about a minute left. I want you to, if you can, just what would be your outgoing message for business owners, whether we're starting or whether we're already in the trenches? What would be your parting message for them?
Yeah, I think as entrepreneurs, as small business owners, we get so excited. I have a corporation. I'm building whatever I'm building, and I'm doing whatever I'm doing, and I love to do it. They forget, now that they've done it and they have success, they go, shoot, now I have money. Now I have resources. Now I have a warehouse full of widgets, right? What do I do now? So I think it's not just the growth part you want to think about. Think about the protection. Kind of like a greenhouse, you have the protective structure in which you grow your garden. We're always doing offense and defense at the same time. So when you start your business and you're growing it, always look at the defensive side as well. What should I be doing to protect what I've grown? I need a bigger greenhouse now because the plants have grown, right? I don't want them growing out the doors and windows exposed. So just think of both sides of the game as you're growing your business, and get the right professionals around you, and you'll be awesome.
Thank you. Judy, thank you again for your time. Folks, if you're not following Judy, please do so at judycorporatebarger.com. Today, we talked about a special message for business owners. So there's a lot of ground to cover. If you didn't get a chance to see this live, please make sure you watch the replay and also share it out with some of your fellow business owners. There's a lot of great wisdom. Again, judycorporatebarger.com. You'll be able to find additional resources. This has been another Money Truth Moment with the one and only Judy Copenbarger. Thanks so much.
God bless. Have a great day.
You too.